Welcome to Seniority Authority, the podcast where I track down experts to answer your questions on aging. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. Let's get smarter about growing older. Within the first 10 minutes of Michelle Boyaner's new documentary film, I saw myself. And it wasn't pretty. The scene was Michelle stuck in traffic, talking to her mom and telling her to, quote, "Make sure you're ready because I'm on my way and we're running late. That means your coat on, your pocketbook closed, you've gone to the bathroom, etc." Superimposed on the screen are the words, "Oh my God, I'm such a bitch." I thought, I have finally found someone who understands me. If you are caring for your elderly parents, stay tuned to our next guest. Thanks to our show sponsor, the Riverwoods Group, Northern New England's largest family of nonprofit retirement communities, where active adults find community, purpose, and peace of mind. Visit riverwoodsgroup.org. Now let's hear from today's guest. Welcome to Seniority Authority. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. It's not a burden. The humor and heartache of raising elderly parents is Michelle Boyaner's new film, and it captures the love, frustration, tenderness, and challenge tied up in helping to care for our parents in a meaningful way. If you're caring for an older adult, I dare you not to see yourself in one of these moments. It's no surprise this film has garnered national critical acclaim. Michelle Boyaner is an Emmy-nominated, award-winning filmmaker whose documentary features have included Packed in a Trunk, The Lost Art of Edith Lake Wilkinson, and festival favorite, A Finished Life, The Goodbye and No Regrets Tour, among others. Co-founder of Greenie Films with cinematographer-editor Barbara Green, Michelle also authored a book of personal essays chronicling her grandmother's battle with Alzheimer's called "Oh, for God's Sakes, Whisper It." She's currently engaged in launching free community screenings for her new film, It's Not a Burden, currently available on iTunes and whenever you rent or buy movies online. Michelle, welcome to the podcast. I'm really thrilled we have a chance to have our conversation.
Thanks for having me, Kathleen. It's great to talk with you.
I tell you, I have elderly parents, older parents, ages 88 and 89, and I really did see myself in that first set of images in your film. And I think a lot of people who see this film are going to see themselves. But before we start talking about the film, I want to ask you what inspired your journey to be a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a storyteller growing up at the family dinner table, especially tumultuous times in that house. And I found that you could distract a big argument by starting to tell a story. And so I was kind of court jester, storyteller, class clown, all kind of wound up into one. And then I continued writing over the years. And then the stories sort of started finding me. And I found that I would hear about something and I would want to write about it. And then my partner, Barbara, and I made our first film, which was called How You've Reached Dave's Apartment. And it was about an hour she spent trying to help her older brother, who is schizophrenic, set up his answering machine. Mm-hmm. And so we found that these personal stories that resonated within us, we felt that could help others. Again, find the humor in what were sometimes quite difficult subjects.
Well, I think that appeals. Humor is a great unifying factor. And whenever you can bring humor to just defuse a stressful situation like a schizophrenic loved one, an older loved one, it just brings us together and gives us a little bit of that relief. Yeah. And I know you're an experienced filmmaker, but it takes a different kind of courage to literally turn the camera on yourself. Did you have any trepidation about doing this?
Well, when it started, I knew I knew that what I was going through could help other people. And so it started with us just putting a camera up in the car, a little GoPro camera to film the time I was spending with my mom. And then I realized I didn't want to just tell our story. I wanted to ask others to share theirs. And I thought, for sure, if I'm going to ask other people to be vulnerable, I need to just show up in every way and allow, warts and all, allow myself and the stories with my parents to be captured. So that's what we did, is we filmed that. And because our Barbara is on camera and it's such a small camera and it's like a fly on the wall, so you forget she's there. And again, in asking the other families to be vulnerable, I wanted to show up and do the same.
Well, you certainly did that, because there are some very powerful moments in that film. It's clear you have forgotten that there's a camera there.
Oh, yeah.
It is clear to me that we are watching a very raw, very personal story. What gave you the inspiration to start telling the story with your mother? You know, you're driving her to appointments, you're taking her here and there. What made you go from, this is really challenging, to, I think there's a film here?
Yeah, well, we were on the road with our last film. We were going to film festivals and bringing it out into the world. And I found myself scheduling doctor's appointments for my mom around when I was going to be home. And one night we were talking with dear friend Maxine, who also appears in the film, with her mother. And we were, instead of talking about like what movies we'd seen lately or what books we've read, we were talking about dementia medication. And we were talking about, well, where do you get your adult diapers in bulk? And we're looking at ourselves like, this is what we're talking about. This is the thing. This is the headline for us. And I thought, Maxine and her mom are so compelling and she's living it. And I definitely knew a lot of people that were going through it. And I said, this can really be something. We can really put these stories together and help people know they're not alone. It just, because that's what I do. I'm a filmmaker. We made a film.
Well, it's so apropos what you say. You are getting together with your friends, and in your 20s, you're talking about dating and hooking up and whomever. And then you're talking about houses and kids, and then books and movies. And now this is the topic. This is what we're all talking about. It's why I created this podcast. The same thing, because people came to me saying, hey, I'm looking for information. Can you help me with this? Where you and I are very much on the same path, where we're saying we have some information. We want to make it available to a larger audience so that people know they're not alone and there's a way through this together.
Absolutely. Because when you're in the thick of it, you feel alone.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like you are in a dark room with a spotlight on you and you are carrying two heavy buckets.
And you're failing everything, because the minute you try to carry one bucket, the other bucket spills, and and for people who are of a certain age and have had some success in life and have been able to negotiate a lot of things, suddenly you're thrust into a very foreign environment where you have to negotiate all this and try to catch up quickly on everything you're supposed to know, which is a lot.
100%. I'm like, I've produced 12 films. Why don't I know what Medicare is? You know what I mean? And it's like talking to people and negotiating and trying to secure relationships with people in the hospital when you're there, and who do you bring cookies to so that they'll answer my dad's
planner.
bell?
You definitely give cookies to the discharge planner.
100%. So yeah,
all the direct caregivers.
Exactly. So it's definitely using your life skills and your business skills and your human skills all to advocate on behalf of your parents.
Exactly. But you know what I think is also interesting? You could have easily made a film just about you and your mom, but it's not just about you. You had said to me something that I loved, which is, I want everyone to have a way in to this film.
And that's why. And yeah, we have heard that because my mom is larger than life and our relationship is complicated. And there was so much there that didn't make it into the film. But it was important to me because I wasn't the only one going in. And I knew that if we could give several different points of view, it would open up that audience. It would make people, a friend of mine, Mike, who's a sandwich dad, was going through that with his mom. I wanted dads that were going through it to be able to identify. I wanted people who had moved in with their parents to be able to, people who had moved their parents in with them. So it was a real goal to cast that net as wide as we could and still have enough time to allow the audience to at least get to know those families a little bit within the larger film.
So for listeners who have not yet seen this film, it is a beautiful film that follows adult children and parents in a lot of different permutations in a lot of different places around the country. So you film how many? Is it 12 families in the film?
Well, we actually filmed with 32 families, and we end up with 20 families in the film. And it was heartbreaking to have to pick between all the beloved stories because there were so many that just so much that didn't make it in. But we do end up telling 20 stories of families across the country.
How did you choose those families? What were you looking for? I know you were looking for a breadth of experience, but what other characteristics?
Well, definitely we were trying to get people with different scenarios. Like I said, someone that was had moved in with their parents, a working daughter that is thinking about her mom all day and so concerned about her, but that takes her mom to adult daycare somewhere, all the different scenarios. And so in reaching out to people, it was also, and maybe not surprisingly, difficult to find people that would be willing to share those stories and to be vulnerable and to open up their lives in that way. And so we, as I said, cast a net very wide through synagogues, churches, senior centers, family doctors, friends, Facebook groups. I mean, postings everywhere. We're coming to the East Coast. We're coming to the Midwest. And that's how we ended up with those initial 32 love stories that became then the 20 that were made it into the film.
Wow. So this film began in 2015. It took 6 years to produce. So you've done this before. This is not new to you. However, you didn't anticipate COVID. How did COVID impact the filming of this?
Yeah, COVID. COVID changed everything in that we had finished filming, but we were in post-production. And so initially we had planned for a theatrical start to our film where we would be released in movie theaters, and movie theaters became people's homes. So that changed everything for our distribution plan. But on the human side of it, we were very concerned for our families in the film and parents that were going through, people that couldn't visit their parents that were in assisted living or in different places, me wanting to keep my own dad safe and wanting to wrap him in bubble wrap and protect him. And so thoughts were with that as well. But really, thankfully, we had completed all our travel to film with everyone. It was just really post-production and then trying to get it out into the world, to the people. So what we saw as something that would be a shared experience in a theater with audiences premiered online and digitally. And so people watched it in their homes, which is wonderful that we had that ability to get it to them. So yeah, it was a difficult thing to work on something for so long and have such a vision of how you thought it was going to be and then pivot. So we've been pivoting. We've built up the leg muscles.
Well, I'm telling you, it's a phenomenal film. I, for one, am so glad that it's available online because I got a chance to watch it as soon as I heard about it. And there's been a tremendous amount of wonderful press about this film. And it's accessible to everyone. And if you're listening in the show notes, we will have links to how you can find the film. If you're getting smarter, help us reach more minds. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends to follow us on social or subscribe to our newsletter at seniorityauthority.org. One thing I'm curious about as a documentary filmmaker, you're doing this for 6 years. How do you know when you're done with the film? I mean, I think you could go on and on.
Yeah, no, you could. And there were stories there were stories that we went back a few times with different families. Like a lot of the stories, we went once and we did an interview almost in a, like, if you remember the movie When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
And they had those wonderful little vignettes with couples telling their stories sitting on a couch. That was the visual in my mind when we started this, that we would do those types of interviews with all these different families. But as we got in with certain families, we saw that there was more that we could share. And so we went back a few times and tried to follow any changes or any things that might have been unexpected or just something that we felt might bring value to their story and make it a little larger. And so there is definitely a time when you take a step back and look and say, we need to get this film done and out into the world. Mm-hmm. And so as the writer-director, I just had to finally say, let's go into post-production, which ended up being quite a lengthy process as well. And we were fundraising all along the way as well, because it's an independent film. So we would raise enough to travel, and then we'd raise enough to pay our composer, and then we, all the different things. So it felt like 10 years. But yeah, there was a natural point where it just felt like that we had just finished kind of the third verse and we don't need to add a fourth verse. We're ready to go.
Well, it's wonderful that you had such a rapport with these families that they invited you back and to be closer in their lives. One of the phrases you used to describe your film is a patchwork quilt of stories to wrap around yourself, which I love. After working for so long on this, how does the reaction of the film feel to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's what we hoped. As soon as the film, we were lucky enough to be named Documentary of the Month on the Today Show, and when the film came out. And as soon as the piece aired, we were getting hundreds and hundreds of signups on our website and people saying, I can't wait to see this film. And just the response was enormous, again, for such a small film. And then once the film premiered, just again, hundreds and hundreds of emails coming in. I feel seen. No one in my friend group is going through this. I sat crying at my computer watching this. Just exactly the thing that's written in big letters. I'm just looking at it on our wall here in the office. So people will know they're not alone. Yeah. And it's that phrase, now I know I'm not alone. Now I know I'm not alone, is throughout people's emails. And so that was everything we had hoped for. The fact that they weren't able to experience it as part of a larger audience and turn to people next to them, that was the one thing that we had really wanted, but they were getting it. And it was the goal and it was achieved.
I think they're getting it and they're digitally reaching out to the person next to them. I know I've shared this with a lot of my friends. So people are talking about it.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the community screenings that you have been thinking about and what's going to happen as part of that community screenings process.
I appreciate that. We very briefly, I don't know if you remember, but in around September, October, COVID took a break. I don't know where COVID went, but it was like the world opened back up and we were invited to screen the film for a week of very exclusive theatrical screenings in Provincetown, Massachusetts, as part of their Women's Week there. And I mean, come on, women, I mean, the bulk of this responsibility falls on adult daughters.
Yes.
And women that are super women that are having to carry every load and then extra loads. And so Provincetown has been a very special community to us with previous films. And so we said yes, and we came there. And so it was our first time seeing the film with audiences. And
wow, that must have been an incredible experience.
It was overwhelming because the screenings became support group meetings. Afterwards, we would do a Q&A and people wanted to share their own stories. Mm-hmm. They stood applauding, crying, wanting to hug, like all of these in masks. But just almost like a religious experience of people wanting to bear witness to what their personal journey had been. And fellow audience members putting a hand on someone or saying, you know what I did, and making a suggestion. And it was that community bringing together that I was dreaming of and hoping for. And it was happening in these movie theaters. And so then the world closed again. And so we decided what we need to do is we need to go across the country and we need to create these events. We want to make them free. And so we are going to partner with senior centers, women's clubs, whatever organizations across the country. Right now, we're planning a 15-city tour, and we're raising funds and bringing in resources and corporate sponsors and entities that are involved in this community and this sector to help bring us across the country. And we're going to do in-person screenings, do Q&As with families from the film flying in and participating.
Wow.
And then afterwards, in the lobbies of these venues, we're going to have a resource fair. So you'll walk out and there'll be resources specific to that community. Here's a support group in your community. Here's mobility resources in your community. These are senior living resources in your community. These are specific.
Oh my gosh.
And so we're going to produce that
good.
by city. Right now, the tour will launch in Palm Springs on November 12th. At the beautiful Camelot Theater there, which is almost 500-seat theater. And we're partnering with a beautiful senior center, the Mizell Center there. And so we're building city by city, and we want to get as many, we're planning on 15 cities right now. And so we are going to take it to the people and make it accessible to everyone that can come. So make it free and bring the film and its messages and then the resources that can help people directly to the people.
Wonderful. That's taking it one step further, because you're saying part of the issue, I think, around helping older adults is finding access to all of those services in one place, and calling and getting hung up on or getting a busy signal, and to be able to be in one place and collect all the information you need is phenomenal.
Yeah. And to vet those organizations and to be able to say to people, we know something about these places,
This
and
is
here
legit.
it is for you. And with those, if you're an adult child, you can bring your parent, come see the film together, right? And then afterwards experience this or whatever it might be. But just again, to be able to give that message and to let people know they're not alone, and literally, here are the things right in front of you that can help make this easier for you. So that's really the kind of the thing that's keeping me up at night, is how can we make this happen? And knowing that this is so important, feeling the urgency of it.
So for listeners that want to follow this tour, where would they go for information on dates?
Yeah, so they can sign up on our website on itsnotaburden.com, follow us on Facebook, and we'll be keeping everyone posted about cities and dates and all the information as it becomes available. So we've been in planning meetings since October, pretty much since it all happened in real life in Provincetown. How can we do this? And so it's all starting to come together now. Minneapolis is another city we're going to be coming to, Salt Lake City. So several places in Florida, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So all these things are starting to come together. And if they follow us, if they join our mailing list, follow us on Facebook, they'll know it all.
So that's itsnotaburden.com. Write that website down, go online, sign up for the email list, and follow them on social media. And there will be a list of tour dates, which is going to continually evolve. The first one being Palm Springs in November of 2022.
Right. So all the way 2022 to 2023, we're going to be like a rock band on tour. All these.
You need
fun,
T-shirts,
right? Totally,
swag. Yeah,
totally. And different families from the film, different adult children will be joining us. And Atlanta, we're going to have hopefully beautiful Frances, who just turned 94, and her daughter Cynthia. So the different cities where we can have the special guests, we're going to have them join us, which will be great.
They'll be like rock stars.
They are
like signing posters and
completely. And my dad, I can't wait for him to stand in front of an audience. So that'll be great.
Gosh, that would be, what a vision for him to be such a part of this film.
For sure. For sure.
So if you have interest in going to the community screenings, check the website. I know you started making this film with a certain goal or a premise. Did that change along the way as you met families and got more involved? You said initially you thought it was going to be more of an interview, and then you actually got more invited to be part of their life. Did your premise change, or did anything surprise you along the way?
Well, I think the premise of helping people know they're not alone, that certainly didn't change. And I feel that we accomplished that. I think the big sort of aha or thing for me was really watching my relationship with my mom change and letting go of a lot of the issues and walking the path with her that I end up walking. Unexpected things that happened with her when we thought it was one thing, that it was going to be the walk down the long hallway of dementia, became something else with her. And so for me, it was the personal transformation of that relationship with my mom. And I think that in showing that relationship to people, it also gives an example or a visual to allow others to try to examine what they might have going on. And because believe me, there were times I wanted to smother her with a pillow, and you can tell. And it ends with a lot of love. And so I feel grateful to be able to show that transformation from frustration and resentment to love.
And you didn't take on a simple relationship there. It was, and you can see in the film how that relationship changed. So I think oftentimes in the media and in conversation, we can trivialize or oversimplify relationships with parents and relationships with older adults. And isn't he cute? Isn't she sweet? And the reality is much more layered, complex, dark, and complicated. And your film is there. It is there. It doesn't take the easy road.
Yeah, no, thank you. And another thing just that you said there is when we were filming with Cynthia and Francis in the Atlanta area, we were walking down a hallway. Francis was in an assisted living community, and I saw a picture on a door, and a daughter had placed a photograph of her mother when her mother was in her 20s. And I think underneath it was written something like, remember when you're walking into this room, this is who you're dealing with. And that really struck me because we had the chance to remind people that those people, they're still in there. And our parents, now we might look at them and like you said, they're cute or they're this or they're that, but they were in the wars. They were school teachers. They were airline pilots. They were jumping out of airplanes and parachuters and all the different things. And if we can help people remember that they are people and that they aren't just now someone parked in a wheelchair somewhere in a lobby or whatever it might be, these are full lives. And so to be able to show that message that those people are still in there somewhere, and to be able to remind people of that, because I was reminded of it each time we did these interviews, to find out, to ask families for pictures of when they were younger and do you have Super 8 footage and what were your stories, and to be able to more deeply humanize people and let you see who they were and not only who they are today. So that was another really important thing I think we were able to do.
Yeah, that is so important. Being in this industry, no one is their age. They are not just their age, this 88-year-old person. You have to know who they are in totality to humanize them, to really see who they are. And that is so important. And it's hard in our busy world, and people are always looking for that shortcut. And I think this film was able to help people realize it is the totality of the person, not who they are in this moment when they are at their most frail, most vulnerable. And they're not just that. They're not that at all.
Right. And also Esther says in the film, when she's going to be moving from one place to another, I'm just being picked up and put somewhere and expected to just make friends. And I think we also don't necessarily think about that. We think, well, they should be happy because they're going to be with a big group of people that are their same age. But it's the same dynamics if you changed schools when you were in elementary school.
Sure.
You've got to form friendships. And so just the things that we wouldn't necessarily consider, to have a chance to just take a little flashlight and shine a little light on that and say, just think about this when you're doing that, how it might affect, and just consider that in your approach and in your consideration, and do your best to listen,
Well, I think anyone that watches It's Not a Burden will realize it'll open up a whole world of expression, emotion, and understanding. It certainly did for me.
Thank you.
It was wonderful. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about the film or your work that you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity. And I so appreciate being able to tell your audience about it, and would look forward to hearing from people via email after they've seen it. Because again, we love knowing that it connected. It means something to us. We are storytellers with heart, and those interactions fuel us. And so just really looking forward to continuing to get this film out into the world, and appreciate you helping us spread the word.
Well, I think you and your partner are not only storytellers with a heart, but storytellers with a higher purpose. You really are out there to help people. So thank you so much. It has been a true honor to talk with you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our show for today. Please check out our show notes for links as to where you can go for the free community screening and where you can find and screen It's Not a Burden online. And for more information on the 2022 release. If you enjoyed our conversation, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts so more people can find Seniority Authority. Until then, enjoy the chance to get smarter about growing older.